Welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And here we are with episode 66, which 66 seems good at the start of our creepy month.
It does.
One day we will get to 666.
666. Hopefully just in time for October as well,
exactly.
As we kick off.
That is a long way from now, I'm sure, but still, we will be much older. Near death's door.
Yeah, near death's door.
Probably.
And that episode will open the floodgates.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But this is our first episode of our creepy horror October, where we will be arranging some delights to come along. We always do a little horror special and things like that will be coming your way. I'm sure we'll sort that out.
I'll just say,
listen.
We have such sights to show you. There you go.
But today we are looking at our top 3 most ridiculous sequels.
Yes. So as always, thank you for checking out the show. Please hit that subscribe button. You'd be surprised the amount of people who listen to the show but don't subscribe. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you can, leave us a tasty little review. It always helps. Can you explain this what we thought of for today's episode?
So, this came to a head, and actually there is a specific reason. So we've always heard of like ridiculous sequels. Sometimes, I mean, I'm not saying that I've got many, like say, direct to video or things like that on my lists. But there are many ones like that where you just hear ridiculous things. Like, what is it? The birds, Birdemic or whatever it is, like that, crazy ones like that. Like, where you just hear about these ridiculous sequels. But then sometimes it can also be, when we're thinking about these, it can be a sequel that was a standard sequel, but it had something so ridiculous in it, or something so stupid or silly in that in that film that you suddenly went like, that completely ruined the film for me. It was like a ridiculous kind of, to be fair, probably a good example, and I wouldn't use it with that film because it is so dark, but our last episode plug was our Last House on the Left episode. And we did mention the original Last House on the Left film, which has some cheesy, ridiculous kind of scenes in it that actually kind of take you out of the film. Yeah, those are some where it's just the scenes, but some of our choices could also be like a full-on ridiculous sequel. Like, why did they make this sequel to this film that never needed a sequel? There are many things out there. Now, the one that actually made me think of this is it's odd because it came to my head because this is a film that I still haven't watched. Now, I've got it recorded at home and I'm ready to watch it. Yeah. But it came to my head because of The Exorcist 3.
Okay.
Now, The Exorcist 3, and I showed you this a while ago, and it popped into my head because it's just a ridiculous idea. I believe there is a scene when they go to heaven in that film, and Fabio is Fabio, who you might not know, who is like, I think at one point in the 90s in the late 80s and 90s was deemed probably as the most like the best looking man in the world, with his long blondie brownie kind of hair, his muscles like Schwarzenegger back in the heyday kind of thing, this tan skin, and he was kind of seeing that. And the idea of me not having seen this film, so I don't know, because I heard The Exorcist 3 is actually a really good horror film. Like, well, I've heard it's actually like probably the only other good Exorcist film or something like that. But it was the idea that in between this film that I've heard people say great is this ridiculous scene of Fabio, and maybe in more context, but I'm leaving that for now in my imagination. I haven't read any more into it purely because I want to see this play out. But I almost couldn't believe to myself that actually happened in this film, where it has a great actor, George C. Scott's in it, the idea of this great actor, and then there's a scene when he enters Heaven's Gates, and it's like, there's Fabio with some fake angel wings on and some like a white dressing gown. It's still showing that bod.
Of course, you've got to show the bod.
You got to show that bod off. You got them flexing. I'm pretty sure you probably still could even get a whiff of nip.
You've got to oil the bod.
It's there, and you're getting the idea of dong. We're not seeing the dong, but we're getting that dong.
The illusion of dong.
We're already off here. That weirdly popped into my head. I was like, there are some ridiculous ideas of sequels, or there are just films that had scenes in them that are just so ridiculous that they kind of ruin the idea of what their original film was. I think that's important to say. It is ridiculous sequels. So it kind of betrays the ideas of the original in a ridiculous way, or it puts in scenes. It's just like, is that really your concept? Like, really, that's where you've gone with it. So
I think you make a fair point. You know, they often say jumping the shark, you know, in Happy Days when the Fonz apparently jumped a shark, you know, in an actual pool or something like that. And I think eventually, and horror is known for milking, cinema is known for milking franchises and sequels, but eventually films jump the shark, or films come up with concept which is so kind of ridiculous.
Absolutely. In fact, you just saying jumping the shark, suddenly I'm just now thinking that like that would have been a jumping the shark. Would have actually been a good feature name for us. It may reappear now. It's popping into my head thinking jumping the shark with certain ones actually could be a good feature going forward.
Maybe that's really cool. And I mean, I'm just thinking about, you know, the new Cobra Kai series. I've been watching it. It's on, I think this is season 5 maybe.
Turns like this now. It's like paying homage now to and bringing back characters from the third Karate Kid film, isn't it?
It started. I mean, but I liked the original Cobra Kai series. Was really cool. It was kind of a look at what had happened since, and it was about the tournament, and the karate kind of played a backstory to the drama, whereas now it's like life and death, like World War III, about this karate. And each I'm not joking, each episode basically is like something will happen, and then Danny, or you know, I don't even know, Danny LaRusso, or Johnny Lawrence, or one of the main characters, something will happen, and they'll go, well, I know somebody, and it will go to a flashback of some random character from one of the films
you can't even
remember, and we'll go back and see that, and it's kind of like it's got to a point where it's so ridiculous now. You know, one of the people is flying like karate masters in from around the world, and it's like, what the fuck, this is so ridiculous, but I can't stop watching it. So I kind of went in for these.
I haven't films. Just to say that one, like I love the original Karate Kid films, or even the sequels. I love them, even the random like ass characters. The third one with the fucked up guy who's like got a slick back hair, who's now in the 5th season, is just he's like, he was like the maximum like cheesy kind of 80s 90s kind of like villain kind of thing, and I fucking loved it at the time. So I was definitely intrigued by that. But the original film was very much actually more a drama. Karate was kind of in the back, in the background, even in the original film. So I can see the progression there, because the sequels went crazy as well. So it's like there is a point now where nostalgia takes over, and they're like, let's just make sure we bring back all the original people.
That's kind of where
it's now it's like, and then the story will come after that. We'll work out how that makes any fucking sense later on.
But I mean, our last In Memoriam, which was our top 3 summer horrors, I started, I believe. So I will bestow upon you the privileges of starting this.
Although I would say this isn't In Memoriam.
No, but it's it's
not that feature anyway. In Memoriam wise. So I thought we were saying it's part of that features.
It's not part of that.
For consistency reasons, I had to point out.
I'll let you go first. That's what I wanted to say.
So I was going to say that we had a little bit of a thing before. My phone got broken, destroyed completely. So I'd written a list about 2 weeks ago of my ideas, and then when I came to Rob's there, I was like, I literally hadn't had any chance. I hadn't had my laptop at home. I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't actually revisit. My list is gone. It is literally destroyed to the ground. So I had to come in today and kind of reassess. I was trying to think all day about them, and trying to I was trying to work out what were they, and it was at that point when I was stuck on a film where I was like, I cannot fucking remember what that film was, and I wanted to talk about it, and my mind is still blank, and sadly, whatever it was, it will come back to me. It might come back midway through this episode. I'll just scream it out loud, like, "Ah, you bastard!"
You'll make some last-minute substitutions.
So I've had to bring in a completely different list. I think there might only be one film that was originally on that list that is remained. I literally can't remember what the list was. I'd looked into it more, I'd researched it, and things like that, and now I'm just like, going off. I'm on a wing. You kind of hear. So, some of mine are a little bit different than I would have maybe chosen originally.
Well, we might come back to this thing one day, so you may be able to get them back. But yeah, take it away.
Okay, so I am going to start with Jaws: The Revenge.
Okay.
So I was going to choose a different. Now, there's one of my picks that was Rob described one earlier. He told me a description. I don't know what his choice is, but he gave me a description of one that was like a sequel kind of one where led off. And it was on my list, and I've decided to remove it from my list.
Okay,
so that Rob may keep it in case, because it sounded so similar to what I was thinking that I'm like, I'm going to step away from that other film now. Right, so I've gone for maybe something a bit more mainstream. I think mine are going to be a bit more main, as my last minute has destroyed my obscure choice that I definitely had and I can't remember. Jaws: The Revenge. Now, we love Jaws the original. I think this plays perfectly into a ridiculous sequel. It's not only, it is his fourth, it is the fourth sequel to Jaws, a film that is a very closed off film.
Yeah.
The original is a story of a white shark that invades a beach in a kind of very Hitchcockian kind of way. It was Spielberg's original, like kind of one of his first like major film that kind of gave people the spooks and the scares and showed what he was capable of. And it had Roy Schneider as a classic, who did return for the next sequel kind of thing, which was a much more bland kind of boring film, but it was still basically just a shark, on a new beat. It's just another shark has come out kind of thing. So this once in a lifetime shark from the original is now apparently repeated.
Yeah.
By the third one, which could have also made it into this, was Jaws 3D, which is quite ridiculous. But that one was quite a fun film.
Yeah,
it was I always had a soft spot for that one. Dennis Quaid, kind of right in there, 3D in your face,
mind-popping 3D,
in the eye-popping 3D. Yeah, but Jaws: The Revenge adds on things. It gives things to the shark.
Yeah,
it gives the shark powers that is just fucking ridiculous. So the idea is that the original family, so Roy Snyder's not in this, but his wife is.
Interesting.
And the family have travelled, and they've gone to a different part of the world.
Before they travel, I actually remember, because I watched this film. I think I borrowed a DVD set from you.
I did. I had 2, 3, and 4, like a special separate set that was released.
Don't take the original set.
Yeah, the original wasn't in the set. It was just 2, 3, and 4. I don't know.
Yeah, but I remember watching it, and I actually thought this could be quite promising, because the opening scene has one of Brody's sons, who is now a police officer on a boat, and he ends up, getting knocked into the water and quite brutally dying.
He does, And
I was thinking, okay, this could be. I mean, it's Jaws for the Revenge.
It is.
This is going to be not as shit, maybe.
So you thought,
okay.
But that opening, that does give you I do remember the opening actually is. It's quite totally different actually to a lot of the rest of most of the rest of the film. And when it says the revenge, you think that there's a case that it's going to now be that they're going to be on that same beach hunting out for thing. Instead, it was more about the fact that the mother kind of has to come over the loss and kind of get away from it and escape from it.
They move from Amityville.
Yeah, exactly. They move far away to
the Bahamas.
The Bahamas. It is the Bahamas. I'm going to say but the Bahamas is the setting, and we have a slightly grumpy Michael Caine who doesn't give a shit because, he didn't give a shit about this film. There's many quotes out there about his nice house that he built because of this film.
I love that.
It's amazing. It's an honest quote. It's like, yeah, exactly. Okay, why the fuck not? He did one film that made him loads of money.
Yeah.
But yeah, the film does not go in the trajectory that you thought it was going to go. But the problem is they give the idea that the shark, who I swear at one point is roughly, I don't know what's happening with my voice right now.
That's okay.
I do think, I swear at one point in this film, he is also referred to as Jaws. But on top of that, it's the same shark that killed their son.
It followed them.
And there's the talk of the idea that they have a tracking ability that means they can track them from Amityville to the Bahamas, which are literally thousands of miles away from each other. The idea that the shark, and this leads to the idea that in some way it almost feels more like the shark is out for revenge.
Yeah.
Like the shark is a descendant of the original shark from the film, and the shark is the one coming for revenge for the family. And it all plays out. We have more deaths and things like this, but the film can't shake this ridiculous idea that nothing matches that awesome tone of that original kind of the opening scene, as you said, is actually quite a powerful scene. The idea that it was his son, and almost, I guess, plays against the idea that you're thinking maybe the son is going to be the one now,
the hero from the father,
and then he gets brutally killed. But no, the rest of the film is basically just lacking in any tension. It is on a beach, but it just has so many ridiculous things. Michael Caine is kind of ridiculous just to be in this film from the beginning.
It was Michael fucking Caine.
Exactly. And we get a lot of these, but the fact that he's just literally just seems to give no shit whatsoever in this film. He's got his little plane, he's got his little beach house, they're all that, but I'm not here to really delve into the film. I'm just saying, like, from its conception, the idea, that one part alone is enough to say that it's a ridiculous sequel.
Yeah.
Anyone who's seen it knows that this film goes in ridiculous, kind of lacking tension, quite hilarious, like bits where people fall into water in quite hilariously stupid ways.
Yeah.
And like their reactions just seem to have no tension to them or things like that. So it's like some kind of Benny Hill kind of classic where they just kind of accidentally flop into the water and it's like, oh no, oh shit, he's dead. Like there's none of that tension that's brought in the first scene at the beginning of the film.
No.
And when this actually felt like out of the sequels, as you said at the beginning, it almost felt like, oh, maybe they're trying to make this more serious again. And instead, that lays the groundwork for the biggest kind of twist in the world, is the fact that no, it's not serious at all. It's actually the least fucking serious, least serious than the 3D film that came before it. And yet the 3D one, which has, awful like idea of like 3D effects and stuff like that. And yet at the same time, that's still a better film than Revenge. Revenge is widely known as one of possibly the worst sequels in horror films.
I'm 90% sure, if I remember correctly, that there's a scene in it where Jaws, I'm just going to call him Jaws. It reminds me of the scene in Peep Show where he's drunk and he's watching it and he's like, I'm watching Jaws, here's Jaws. And Mark's like, it's not called Jaws. And he's like, yeah, it is. It's Jaws the shark. Here he comes with his big jaws, It's kind of like that. So I'm sure there's a scene in it where Jaws roars, and they've replaced it with, because I don't think a shark can.
No.
And I think they've replaced it with a lion.
No, there is. You're right. There is. It's just, that's what I mean, like ridiculous, like sound effects. Like when I said about the people fall in, there's definitely those, that scream that's there's I swear I've talked about this before, but there is a scream in like films which is literally
I think it's the Wilhelm
scream. And it's those kind of screams, but some of them are even more comical than even that, where they're like falling in and stuff. And the idea that they make the jaws the jaws roars rhyming, it's like that. No, it's a ridiculous film in general. It's also not a good film. Like I got quite for those kind of ones, they're kind of a bit of fun. The second one also is not very good because it takes itself so seriously that it's bland and boring as hell. It had none of the tension of the original. It's basically just Roy Schneider on a boat with his like kids and stuff being like, there's Jaws.
Yeah.
It doesn't say Jaws, but there's the shark. I can't get out of my head the idea that he's Jaws now.
Yeah.
It will go down in history as Jaws the shark.
It is Jaws the
shark. With his mighty Jaws. That's my first one. I'm going to leave him there.
No, that's a great one to kick us off. I allowed myself one sequel from a big franchise. Because the more these legendary franchises go, or the more these massive horror films go, the more ridiculous the premises get. We did a whole retrospective on Halloween, and we did stuff like Curse, which is just fucking ridiculous, and then Halloween Resurrection. I mean, the Saw films just get bigger and more convoluted and ridiculous, stupid. And then you get to Saw 3D, which is like 2 films in one.
And those ones to me felt a bit more like, I don't know why, but it just felt like I some of those I didn't touch those kind of sequels because I was literally like, Yeah, I guess by the time you're on an 8th film, you're expecting it to be shit.
Exactly. So the first one from a big franchise I chose was Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives.
Yeah.
And it is so ridiculous, because after Jason died in the final chapter, they tried to set Tommy Jarvis up as the next killer in, I think it's The New Beginning, where you get Roy. And I don't think, part 5 isn't so ridiculous in itself. Somebody trying to get revenge and blaming it on this local legend. I don't think that's
I was mixed up there because I was thinking 5 was the one where we get the twist that it's not actually Jason.
Yeah, that's 5.
That's 5. Yeah.
That's 5. But then what they did at the end was they were like, Tommy Jarvis is going to be the killer in new trilogy.
Yeah.
But it didn't take off. People didn't really like it. So they decided that what they would do is they would do the next best thing, which is resurrection. They would bring Jason back to life. And
we've talked about this one, but we have talked about this one before. Yeah, we've talked about this in an episode before about the resurrection and stuff like that.
Potentially, yeah.
But it is a ridiculous, like that film alone it's like pumping it up to 11, but it's ridiculous.
And it's it opens up with this kind of half gothic horror, half zombie-esque scene where they go to the graveyard, and then they got
the giant like RV in this film, haven't they? Like, a whole RV scene. Yeah.
They've got a whole RV scene. We've got Tommy Jarvis, who accidentally ends up kind of reanimating Jason Voorhees with a piece of metal fencing.
Well, by trying to kill him by stabbing him again. When he's already
dead. But there's a badly placed.
Is stabbing his heart?
He stabs his heart.
He's like, there's the heart still remains, so I must stab them.
So coincidentally, at the same time that there's a bolt of lightning.
It's very 50s monster feature kind of style, isn't it?
Yeah. And then, Jason kind of comes back. But some of the ridiculous moments in there.
And to be clear, and like the last one, I assume we were saying this is ridiculous, but in a good way.
Oh yeah, this is awesome.
This is like balls to the wall kind of.
It's the first time the franchise actually embraces comedy. It becomes a bit of a horror comedy. And this is one of my rainy day films because it's so ridiculous. You should be watching this and thinking this is dog shit. Instead we get these ridiculous moments. Obviously, Jason's reanimation. When he reanimates, we then get a Bond scene where he walks past the camera, turns in it, and then slices a knife, which is just fucking out of place, but amazing. I want it at every Friday the 13th.
This is one of those ones where they throw ideas at it that, like we said, should jump the shark. They should have made it ridiculous, and yet actually it turned out Friday the 13th was the franchise that needed to become ridiculous. It needed these kind of over the top, because the sequels that followed the original, say 3, which were okay in different ways, kind of thing. I think the sequel, that like 4 and 5. They tried so hard to stick to that, like almost originals kind of concept of that thing.
Yeah,
like they came across quite bland, didn't they? They came across quite not like Jason was not to level we want. And this is actually the beginning of the Jason that actually probably most people know this one more than they know
this
the original.
Is the most iconic one. I would, when I watch Friday the 13th, when I try and marathon them, I'll be honest, I don't watch 1, 2, and 3.
I don't know what I thought you were going to say masturbate. When you said marathon, I don't know why my brain went, this is what you get from like not really eating much all day and then listening to this and just being like, okay, masturbate to them.
I mean, I'm now trying to think.
He enjoys them that much.
If I had to masturbate to one of them,
this would be the one.
This one or the one after, I don't know. I don't know.
It's a sexual Jason in this film.
It's got to be a tough tug, but it might not be my toughest. But then we also get, he gets a scene where he kills all of these paintballers, and there's like he smashes one's head, and we get a smiley face, which is
a very like the paintballers the dialogue is very cheesy.
Yeah, the dialogue
whole accent is so like it is such a level of cheese. Which again, in any other franchise, if this scene was in Halloween franchise, and there are some that close to this, and Resurrection is one of them, but if this scene was in that, it would still just feel completely wrong. Yeah. But in this franchise, it completely doesn't.
It does feel place. And then there's a scene, where there's a deputy police officer who has like this gun with this massive laser sight on it, and he gets this whole, similar to when we spoke about Last House on the Left, another cheap plug. We mentioned in the original, there's some police that have this kind of Benny Hill-esque, weird kind of hillbilly comedy music. He gets something like that, and then we get some really cool deaths.
This one even go. I don't want to say that this one to me because it has the music in it, but it feels like a grungy, heavy metal almost version of Jason in here. Like you've got the Alice Cooper song in this one as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
like, the man behind the mask. Yeah, like but it feels almost like that. I don't know why, but there's something about it that makes me think of like a heavy or a rock music video from the 80s.
Yeah,
like that kind of like crazy, like it almost feels like something that Alice Cooper could do in his show. Like this is like the style. Like Jason looks more grimy and dirty, but he also looks bigger still.
Well, it's in
like
the next one
look
where
dirty.
King Hodder takes over, where it stays ridiculous, and he now fights effectively Carrie. And I was I was trying to think of which one am I going to put on my list, because they're both ridiculous. And then Jason Takes Manhattan is ridiculous, and then Final Chapter is ridiculous, and then Jason X and Freddy versus Jason. But this one is the one that I enjoy the most. And there's another two ridiculous moments. One where we get both of them have meta humor. One of them is where characters see Jason, I think, and they're like, "This is what happens in a horror movie. We have to get out. We're going to get killed," and they're aware of that. And then there's another where there's actually, and this is the only time it happens in the franchise, but there's a fourth wall break where a caretaker is kind of goes and he looks at Jason's grave and he says, "Why'd they have to go and dig Jason up?" Then he looks at the camera and says, "Some folks sure got a strange idea of entertainment." And I kind of love that they acknowledge that, fuck, this is ridiculous because we've had to bring this guy back, and it's until this
several times.
Well, no, this is the first time they bring him back.
Oh, it's the first time they bring.
Technically, they bring him back to life.
He's been killed and like kept underwater at this point, and but he hasn't technically died.
No,
well, except for maybe.
Well, he dies in part
first
4.
time he drowns.
Yeah, I don't.
When he drowned when he's younger, that's the only.
The rest of them take themselves very seriously, and then this one, it jumps the shark, but it almost looks at you, winks, and goes, "Yeah, I'm jumping the shark," and you love it. Yeah. So that'd be my second one. I kind of love how tongue in cheek and how out of place.
The next one was Carrie, and then the Manhattan, and they're all just fun, cheesy, tongue in cheek kind of films.
Yeah,
by that point.
Yeah,
and that's the way you kind of went from there. It's like apart from maybe the remake, we haven't really had all of them after that were just not really serious.
No.
Jason X, no, has plenty of weird,
plenty of weird.
Freddy versus Jason as well. That all and it's kind of, it was nice to see the bring back Jason with a kind of more serious tone. And I'm not saying that's not the right way to go with it, but at the same time, I'd be completely in if we have another stupid, ridiculous
Jason.
I'd absolutely be up for
that. So over to you, Eve.
Right, I think. I feel like mine are more ridiculous, but maybe not great films, or they take it in a ridiculous concept, or they ruin the original. And as you just did, Jason, where it's more of the so ridiculous it's fun.
Yeah.
I've chosen one which is this is the one that was on my original idea, and I wasn't sure whether to do it because it's a bit more of a serious one, but it has parts in it that I just thought was so ridiculous and undermined. It's Halloween 2.
Okay. The remake.
Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
Okay, lay it on me, hun.
So, I feel like maybe you can guess the parts of the film that I feel ridiculous, but there's just something about this film that's so the original remake, which lots of people have mixed feelings on and stuff like that, and I like a certain cut of the film which doesn't even exist anymore.
It's very divisive.
It's very divisive in that way. Some people like the way that Rob Zombie approached it. Some people absolutely hate the way that Rob Zombie approached it, and it's both ways. And I have feelings either way. But for the most part, the original remake I felt at least was mainly honorable to the Michael Myers and the franchise as a whole.
Yeah.
I felt like it was, it honored what had come before it while also adding some new ideas. So at least I could accept it. It wasn't a remake just trying to be a remake of the original Halloween.
Yeah.
It does do that, obviously.
But that's like the last.
But that's actually the shorter part of the film is remaking that. The longer part of the film is the origins of Michael and stuff like that, which some people again would say never needed to be touched and stuff like that. But that's film.
Yeah.
But then this is Halloween 2, which I had high hopes for. It had a fantastic trailer. I remember being so hyped for this like kind of film, being like, he gets to take it in a different direction now. He can go away from it, kind of thing. And it does have it. I'm not saying it doesn't have some good parts to it. The opening homage to the original Halloween 2 in the hospital. I really liked that. I really like that part. And I do like the way we get to explore the characters' psyches a little bit. The problem is Rob Zombie constantly undermines his ideas with just really like. I mean, there is a certain Rob Zombieism about the way that his characters are, about them having to be almost hillbilly-like, and it does undermine certain characters. He makes Laurie Strode the least likable Laurie Strode has ever been in the film. She is the furthest thing from Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode in this film. She makes her unlikable, and it's well, I'm suddenly blanking on her name.
She was in the
Sheriff Brackett's daughter. Brackett. It's Annie Brackett. There we go. Annie Brackett, and she was obviously in the actress who plays
Danielle.
Danielle.
Oh, my brain.
Yeah, my brain too. Anyway, Danielle, you'll know who I'm talking about. It might come back to us.
I don't want to look either, but I feel I don't want there to be, when you're when you just can't think of a name. I know that's absolute dead air.
Yeah.
Nobody is interested in it.
But anyway, I'll keep talking.
Daniel Harris.
There you go. Daniel Harris. So Daniel Harris, obviously, had been in previous sequels of the film and stuff like that. And she ends up being far more the more interesting character, although she is oft in a brutal scene, which is actually one of the better and more heartbreaking scenes in the film.
Yeah.
And these bits work fine. But what is ridiculous to me is, one, to me, this is not Michael Myers. I don't know who this guy huffing and puffing and walking around breathing about is, but he doesn't have the light breathing of Michael Myers. He has these constant, like he's like a dog on heat, kind of like heavy breathing moments, which completely kept taking me out of the film. Because I was like, that's not Michael Myers. This isn't Michael Myers walking around with these big, heavy. And even the new ones have not gone to this idea that they changed the idea that Michael Myers is this silent, kind of low breathing kind of figure shape kind of thing. Whereas this one, after it obviously done the origins, it felt like we could now treat Michael Myers like he was just some big hulking man instead of what he is, kind of thing, instead of that psyche. That one thing was just something ridiculous to me because the film has him kind of half the film just moving around from place to place between forests, and all we hear is him basically just puff and breathing. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't sound... And you hear like his anger come out and things like that. And what makes Michael Myers scary is the fact that he doesn't seem to actually show that anger ever. Yeah. He never reveals that. Whereas in this one, he is showing that anger in full force in this sequel. He is smashing people's heads in. He's being truly violent. But every time he does it, he's making grunting. These big grunting, heavy noises. You're seeing how angry. And I'm just like, that for me is it's an annoying thing, and it's ridiculous that for me that's why it's ridiculous, because he couldn't see that that's so far from what it is. This is like Rob Zombie making a completely different film about a guy that
which is strange because there's none of that in the original. When I say original, I mean the first Rob Zombie remake. Whilst I like it. We get to explore Michael kind of a bit more, and it's an interesting take on it. Yeah. Even when we get to the later part, which kind of is the Halloween proper remake almost. Yeah. He still doesn't do any of that grunting stuff.
He is still the silent character we'd expect. With just that he does breathe, obviously, but it's that light, creepy kind of breathing he has. But yeah, that's it. But however, these are things that I think are ridiculous that Rob Zombie couldn't see in a sequel to his own movie that he'd made, that this doesn't match the original film. And it felt like it kind of felt a bit like a middle finger, like he was just like, fuck you, I'll make whatever the hell I want to make kind of thing. I made your film, now I'm making my Halloween film or whatever it is. Yeah. But the ridiculous part is the stupid plot twist. The ridiculous part is the fact that we have to watch a scene of his wife returning as a white ghouly figure with a white horse. Yeah. and explaining Michael Myers. The original explained an idea of a child of abuse who had seen so many abusive things and so many things within him that he took it in that way. He was silent. He was so abused, but he was almost silent from the effects of what he had done, that he knew what was wrong and he knew he'd lost his family. Yeah. And that led him to this kind of silent figure, which from a psychological standpoint made sense. What doesn't make sense is suddenly making him fucking Jason Voorhees. Yeah. And suddenly saying that the mother made him do it. Well, because that's what we get.
It opens up with a weird scene where she's explaining the symbolism of a white horse and stuff like that. And it's like
any scene that has his wife in is just a ridiculous choice that Rob Zombie has to put his wife in everything, and sometimes it is at complete detriment to the film, but he doesn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah, and it's strange because you think of that and like that's up to him. He can put his wife in it, and it's something that Tim Burton always has Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah,
but it's like, and don't get me wrong, I think Sherry Moon Zombie's great in, good in Lords of Salem and in the Free From Hell trilogy. She suits
because it suits more the tone of the hillbilly. That a little bit more that kind of what he goes for in his other ones. But there are also many when she's been in them that have been like, you are out of place completely.
Yeah, but it's just in this film, it's just so. It's just out of place and out of character, and
it just
there's nothing building to it in the first one.
No, it doesn't match the tone, and I will actually return to the ridiculous that actually the Laurie Strode character, the whole mental facility thing is really hammy. To be honest, it's not well done.
I didn't even remember that.
Yeah, it has her in like a mental facility. Yeah, she's locked in at one point.
I thought she was just out.
And that's one bit when we actually get him to see the mother because he sees a flash of her down the hall kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, again, I haven't revisited this, but I know what stayed with me, and what stayed with me was how ridiculous these scenes were.
Yeah,
and I have watched it I didn't just watch it at once. I did revisit it revisit it several times after to be like, was that really as bad? And it was as bad a choice as I could think of in a horror film. It's just. It's completely undermining what made a franchise kind of thing. Yeah. And to me, it possibly is the worst Halloween film. I think I can watch Resurrection better than I can watch Halloween 2.
Oh, that's quite a claim.
Even that one was still respectful for the most part of Michael Myers, except for the part of fucking Buster Rhymes. And that's a bad Halloween film. But it's a weird, guilty pleasure, enjoyable. Whereas this one is just a serious slog that also just has ridiculous choices because this is the only one to me that truly is not Michael Myers.
Yeah.
That's why it's the worst to me, because it's not Michael Myers, and Michael Myers is Halloween. Same, Halloween Free Season, The Witch is a different thing, but at least it's different, and it tries to be its own thing, and it tries to make clear it's not a Michael Myers film. That's why it doesn't really count it's not in that area.
Yeah.
That's a Michael Myers film. This, I think, is the worst representation of Michael Myers. Yeah. And the worst way to try and give it. It's even worse than the freaking druids and mythology kind of thing. It's just taking an idea from another franchise, a long-known franchise. And it is just ripping off The Mother Made Me Do It.
It feels a bit 13. Bankrupt, creatively, doesn't it?
It just feels like he didn't give a shit. Like he was asked to make a sequel, and he was like, "Yeah, fuck it, all right, I'll make a sequel."
Yeah,
but it just is. And so that is my second ridiculous choice.
So now my one is actually a film that I rented on my 13th birthday. I rented this film and Dodgeball, and they were both the best films ever when I rented them. And I'll kind of explain why I chose this film kind of towards the end. But it's Anacondas: The Hunt for the Blood Orchid.
Okay, yeah.
And it's from 2004. And it kind of, it follows as kind of a standalone sequel to Anaconda, and it's the second in the franchise.
Yeah.
Before we get the introduction with David Hasselhoff in the sequel, and a crossover with Lake Placid. I'll explain why I didn't choose those, apart from the fact I haven't seen them. I have to have seen the films before we can pick them. But the reason why I thought creature features themselves can get a bit ridiculous, but sometimes I think you can get some that are tongue-in-cheek, and then you get those such as, Lake Placid versus Anaconda, Anaconda versus Lake Placid, whatever it's called, or stuff like, Shark Attack 3 Megalodon, where it's kind of supposed to be ridiculous, It's almost it's tongue-in-cheek. It's like Sharknado.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, those were the ones, some people might have thought go that way, but those ones are made to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're not a sequel that's become ridiculous. They were ridiculous from the beginning.
Exactly. Whereas this film takes itself so seriously, and it kind of goes on further from Anaconda itself, which is a relatively, it's a cool creature feature. It's fun. But in this film, we follow a team of kind of researchers heading to Southeast Asia, where they search for a rare orchid that is believed to be the fountain of youth and can extend life. And what we find is that the plant is actually giving eternal life to anacondas because they're eating it and breeding around it, which gives them, because apparently anacondas grow until they die.
Yeah.
And these are, massive.
It's odd for me because the original Anaconda, I watched all the time as a kid.
Oh yeah, it was badass.
I had the video copy. I watched it all the time. I loved the original, and it itself is kind of ridiculous in many, many ways. But yeah, I've never watched any of the sequels.
But Blood Orchid,
I remember wanting to watch Blood Orchid, but I never actually got around to watching it.
It's fun.
I remember the actor who's in the thing because he went from. I remember it being a big thing because he'd gone from like EastEnders to starring in this.
Yeah,
yeah, the British soap EastEnders. If you're not aware, but yeah, he went to this because he basically he always looked like a macho kind of guy, kind of thing. He's got like the muscles, and he looks like your standard action man kind of thing.
Well, that's it. We follow like. Speaking about the cast, we get kind of like a budget J-Lo and Ice Cube as well. Your kind of token black character who just makes shit jokes at the wrong time, to J-Lo, who's, in the original, she's supposed to be like this strong kind of character. And, we get the similar follow-up to that. But it's just that it's the fact that it has really spotty CGI, even for the time. We get like like in like the first Resident Evil film, where they're going all high tech with computers, and it's like almost like what you'd get on like Paint, Microsoft Paint kind of generated image. It's like that of this orchid and what it can do, and it takes itself so seriously, which is quite strange because it had a relatively big budget of around 20 to 25 million, and it went on to make 75 million. And I think because it's supposed to be serious, it kind of makes it better and slightly more ridiculous than the sequels, which are supposed to be schlocky and low budget.
It's got David Hasselhoff, it's chosen to be schlocky.
Yeah, it's got the Hoff, but there are some genuinely like class moments in this, such as when it opens up, we get classic POV of the anaconda chasing kind of this like village, tribal villager down. And then we don't really see the snakes until these characters fall off a waterfall. And then as one's getting out, you kind of see an anaconda behind them and then swimming away. There's a great scene where in this kind of waist high water, this is where we get our first kind of class kill. They're in waist high water, and then we get like a bird's eye view, and it was used in all the trailers and maybe some of the posters. And as they're kind of walking maybe 10 foot apart, the snake is kind of swimming in between them, and it's just so gross. And then one of the guys is mimicking the Jaws theme at that scene, and then he gets a really CGI death as he gets taken away. But it's the whole film just takes itself so seriously, and we get like the classic in these stories is somebody is always the bad guy. You know, it's not just the animal. So whilst in the original we had John Voight doing this kind of weird, like, I don't know if he was pretending to be Dutch or if he was Dutch pretending to be South American or
but
Southeast Asian.
It doesn't even sound like any of the accents.
No.
It sounds like he's still just John Voight, but occasionally puts on a slight voice.
Yeah,
like occasionally, like, oh, okay, you are trying.
Yeah,
you are trying to do the accent. It makes it actually it's complete. It's not a horror. I watched the new Pinocchio.
Yes, with Mr.
Tom Hanks. But I've got to be honest, it's not one of Tom Hanks's best actions. The film is actually perfect. It's Pinocchio. It's fine. Yeah. The film actually isn't that bad. I think it was fine. But I actually thought weirdly, Tom Hanks, from when they said Tom Hanks is your pet, I was like, actually, he seems like a good fit for it. He's the lovable all-rounder Tom Hanks.
Yes.
But actually, his accent just did, like, occasionally he does like some fake little Italian accent kind of thing. Like an occasional, like, Super Mario kind of thing, like not that bad. But it's much more toned down than that. But then half the time it's just like, you're not even doing it anymore. You're not doing the act. You're just talking as Tom Hanks. You're just talking like you're just talking. And it was just that in my head going, and you just get it with certain actors in some films where it's like they try to, but it seems like they're not really committed to doing the accent. They're kind of hoping that if I do it to start with, I'll just slowly blend it out, and then I can just talk like myself the rest of the film. Whereas actually knowing John Voight and what I've heard of John Voight was probably more like, you want me to do this? Here you go. I've done this. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to do it this way instead. Basically kept doing that throughout the filming and be like, oh, for fuck's sake. Choose an accent, man.
Yeah, nobody told him.
Nobody told him he was in the film.
He actually thought he was chasing this snake.
He's like, let's get this anaconda.
You're trying to do his monologue. The anaconda. It is a fierce animal. I don't think that's what he says, but that's kind of the character he plays. And I think it's Matthew Marston who is in this one, who is the bad guy. And he's, it's so ridiculous, but it's such good fun. I can't, I wouldn't say, yes, unlike, Friday the 13th, where I actually think it's a good, well-made film, and it's like a lot of the choices they made play off. It's almost like this film takes itself so seriously, but it doesn't land. But it is fun, It's kind of like actually it's fun,
This was, to be fair, released when it was peak, like, because DVD was still a fairly new thing. Like you mentioned before, Lake Placid. Did you've never seen Lake Placid?
No, I've seen it.
Oh, I thought you were saying you've never seen. I love Lake Placid, but Lake Placid was one of the first DVDs that I ever got.
We got it watched as a family. I remember, awesome.
Yeah, because this was when they were still like fairly. They were doing like deals and stuff, so they weren't fairly new, but. Obviously, there's always that period when people don't get them for a while, like DVD players. They're there. So the point, and I remember it was things like American Pie or things like that. Were like the first. Evolution was one of the first ones that I ever got. Things like that. But my granddad bought me Lake Placid. I don't think he knew what it was, but he like my late granddad. He died only a couple of years, like a year or so after it. But he bought me that Lake Placid DVD, and I can watch that thing like crazy. I loved anything that had like monster movie kind of style. But it was this point with this one where they had, because it was new DVD, it was no longer like video, which didn't really hit off, but direct to DVD suddenly became this big thing. Like this was a direct to DVD, I believe. Yeah, wasn't it? It wasn't in the cinemas, was it?
Yeah, this was
in cinemas. Yeah, I thought this was direct to DVD.
It got very negative reviews.
The sequel was direct to DVD.
It got very negative reviews, but
I just always think of this in the same line as. Do you remember like American Pie? They did like loads of like Bandcamp
and stuff like
Naked that. Mile. Like they started doing loads of those like direct to DVD. I don't know why. I always just put those ones in the same level of like actually quite. Not bad, like quality of like that they've been made with like production value that they've actually been given some money, but they're still But actually, no, I do now remember it actually being in cinemas.
Yeah,
I do remember seeing it advertised.
I wanted to see it, but I couldn't.
Yes,
I was too young.
So it's definitely not got low budget effects. It's not that low. Where I bet the Hoff one is probably what is that anaconda like on a sock puppet coming out?
I even looked at the poster, and the poster it looks like CGI on the poster. So I'm not sure how they did. But one kind of last thing to say on Anaconda 2 is that the film was nominated for a Razzie for worst remake or sequel, however, lost to Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
That is fucking terrible.
Yes, and now for this slight against Scooby-Doo, we must wage a 2-man war against the Razzie Awards.
The Razzie, I know along with them, but the Razzie, how dare you? Exactly. You can call anything you want. You can pull out any actor in the world, but how dare you call? I bet that also probably means they nominated people like actors out of the film for it, which is fucking disgusting. How dare you? I watched Monsters Unleashed the other day, and it was still a great fun film.
And you masturbated to
it. I mean, it's easier than Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it is. There's a very sexy scene in the film. So you beat me this time. Pun. Before we go to your last one, I think what we'll do is we will take a quick jump over to the social media lounge.
Okay.
As always, you join us in the social media lounge. I just always think of us in like a box, like Sky Sports or something like that, where we're sat there presenting. So over on Twitter and Instagram at CMTH Podcast, we put up. So the ones we had today, I asked about it, were from Karen Madarasi Whelan, who's commented before. Fright Night 2, she suggested. Fright Night is a classic.
I haven't seen Fright Night 2.
But Fright Night 2 is basically went straight to DVD.
Yeah.
And it is effectively the exact same film, except now Jerry Dandridge's sister is the vampire.
There are some of those out there where they're direct-to-DVD ones, and they basically are just a cheap budget version where they've just made the same. They say it's like a continuation, but it's not. In fact, that's a good one to point. So one of them that I was considering, which I decided not to, and also which I considered might be on one of yours, maybe, was the American Psycho 2.
Yeah, I will not watch that. American Psycho is one of my favorite films.
But the thing is that it's ridiculous because it's not an American.
It's not.
They tacked on a beginning to link it to a popular film when it wasn't actually originally designed to be an American Psycho film. So it's American Psycho 2, which is ridiculous because it makes no sense with the context if you know what American Psycho is.
No,
it
doesn't. But then Karen, did say that she still has a crush on Jerry Dandridge, which being the sexual man that is Chris Sarandon is understandable. Jonathan B had Stan Helsing and Scary Movie. I could both see them, particularly Stan Helsing.
Yeah.
And then
I guess, Stan Helsing, that's more of a parody though, isn't it?
It's
like
a parody,
Scary Movie kind of thing.
But I guess because Scary Movie was probably the one, and then had all the sequels and the spin-off, so I could see that.
Yeah,
and then
even Scary Movie got actually too ridiculous for its own good. Like it got to the point where it didn't work anymore. So
and then obviously Simon from So I Married a Horror Fan, go check them out, suggested a whole bunch. So we've got Return to House on Haunted Hill, which had a choose your own adventure gimmick. There was Hellraiser Bloodline. I was thinking of choosing a Hellraiser, but I went for the Jason Lives instead. The Hills Have Eyes 2, which is I don't know if you saw this, but
I don't remember that one being too crazy. But
well, not the remake, the follow-on to the original.
Oh, okay.
Which has
I have heard. I haven't seen that one.
It's one of the only films to feature a dog having flashbacks to a previous film. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say a dong. But...
A dong, no, lots of films have dogs.
A dong having flashbacks.
Yeah, a dong flashback. And then Jason Goes to Hell, Seed of Chucky.
Jason Goes to Hell is a ridiculous, bad ridiculous.
It's awful. Army of Darkness, which I was considering, but it's fucking class.
Yeah.
Freddy's Dead, and then as you got Jaws 4, The Revenge.
Yeah.
So with that, do you want to move on?
Freddy's Dead, I looked at Freddy's Dead as one as well. Yeah. That one. But to me, it's just a bad film. It's not ridiculous. It's just I just still think it's a terrible. I think it's still to me the worst Freddy film.
No, I'm with you. But take it away for your last one.
Okay. So I mentioned that my American Psycho 2 was one that I was considering, but I decided it wasn't worth the breath of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my one is one I only actually saw very recently and it links back to my original reason of why. It's one that a lot of people say is an absolutely terrible film and a terrible sequel. It's The Exorcist 2, The Heretic.
Yes, I haven't seen this.
I mean, I can totally say why people would say it is a terrible. But one thing I would say is, even if you don't like the whole film, go onto YouTube and watch the trailer for this film because it is balls to the wall fucking crazy. It is mad trailer. It gives you an idea of a film which you're just like, what the fuck is going on? It's like quick flashes and bright and colourful. You don't really know what the hell's going on, and it already tells you that this film is going to be fucking weird and insane. Yeah. This film, it's ridiculous for the one reason. This film has Richard Burton, Max von Sydow, and James L. Jones and Ned Beatty in it. Those four actors who are fucking superior actor in a film where, wow. So, from the original, Regan is, and I'm not going to give like spoiler, I'm just going to give you a basic overview because I don't want to, but I will give it like ideas of things that happen, but not the context of which they happen in. As you haven't seen it, I will be respectful of that. And people go and check that out. But Regan is in a mental facility.
Yeah, understandably.
And so it involves things such as a priest having a device to link brainwaves with Regan. Now, think to the original Exorcist, and now think of how fucking ridiculous the idea that we now have the idea that we're going to somehow be able to use a device that can link our brainwaves together in order for us to know. And you already know that we're very far away from these serious and, interesting dark themes of the original one with, Max von Sydow was in the original. And he's returning to this role. I don't know how much money they must have pumped at him to get this. It must have been a truck of money to the house, including Richard Burton. That's the most crazy one. Like the established great British actor Richard Burton is in Exorcist 2, The Heretic. And it has this crazy mix of like lore and mythology that kind of plays out, which is what bogs the film down, to be honest. That is one thing that bogs the film down. It makes almost no sense, but I thought it was kind of crazy ride. It has these huge like scenes of possession. It has one where Regan get the Pazuzu, the demon that is known in the original film is mentioned, but isn't mentioned in a serious way, is now a full-on thing that becomes a succubus version of Regan that goes after her and after other people in this kind of crazy sequence of events. I'm trying to keep this kind of light and around the area. But just in general, it has great like scenes where she's like floating, where it says that she has always had healing abilities. Not just now, she's somehow always. So not just being possessed by a demon, but she's always had these abilities. So she's always had this. You have so many crazy characters. James L. Jones plays like an African like chief in the most kind of racist kind of way. And he kind of links to like the where they're trying to explain the origins of the Pazuzu and like that kind of culture. And it's just all ridiculous. But I didn't completely hate it. I didn't hate it like some people seem to. I kind of thought it was mad. And I like mad sometimes. I'm not saying it's good, but I am saying that I had heard so much that it was bad that I was like, you know what, this is kind of fun. I can see, and now I can see where Fabio might come from in the sequel. But apparently, I know that those ones are actually completely unrelated. They brought back a lot of the cast, like as many as they could from the original here. Obviously not Ellen Burstyn, who's coming back in the new one that David Gordon Green is doing, which high hopes that one's a good, more serious, because I don't think they've really made a full-on serious one. I don't. But I'm now anticipating watching Exorcist 3 and seeing what the good one is like. But even if you don't watch the film, as I said, like the trailer was just so balls to the wall that I was enough like, right, I'm going to check this out.
I'm going to have to check it.
And I'm going to enjoy this. And just, it's got some like crazy deaths in it. It's ridiculous to think that The Exorcist, this classic kind of horror, slow burn kind of crazy. Yes, has some crazy scenes, and it has mad special effects and stuff like that.
Well, it's a massively weird film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a massively crazy film, but at the same time, it is kind of quite a slow film.
Yeah.
But it's also weirdly serious. For a film that has those kind of special effects and stuff, it actually takes the demonic, whereas this one doesn't take it seriously at all.
Yeah.
It is ridiculously miles away. It's silly, it's stupid. It doesn't work at all. So anyone who did look at the original and go, that's what they made for a sequel. Yes, it's a terrible sequel.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad film.
Yeah.
it's fun and crazy in its own way. It makes no sense. It's nonsensical. I'm just saying, I think you might watch it and still go, that was shit. But at the same time, I don't know. I kind of was enjoying the fact that it kind of knew that it almost felt like it knew it was being bad in some ways. But it's nice when at the same time they probably were trying to make something. They were like, this is how we can explain it in this way. We want to make a sequel to this really profitable film.
Yeah.
Let's just go for it. But it's just mad. But the thing is, as I said, the trailer shows you that this was going to be mad from the beginning. So I don't know why anyone was surprised. But yeah, so Exorcist 2, The Heretic is mine were all franchise-based ones, sadly.
The Forgotten List.
The Forgotten One is the main one that I know was a more subverted one, but I still can't remember what it is even at the end of this. But anyway, for the franchise ones, but they're all sequels that I think are, some of them a bit more pushed away, forgotten kind of thing. So let's hear your final.
I think this was actually one of the first films I watched on Amazon Prime as well. One of the very first, maybe the first film. First ever Amazon Prime film. I just stumbled on it one night. I was like, I'm going to check this out. I hadn't watched the original, which has nothing to do with this anyway. And when I said to you,
are we going obscure here? Or?
I think it's a relatively obscure film, but it's not so obscure. It's kind of unknown. Because I checked it on Letterboxd, and a few people I follow have seen it as well. So it's not overly, but
Midsummer 2, Electric Boogaloo.
It's Midsummer Murders. When I mentioned about it being made as a film and then them kind of tacking it on, I can see where you got American Psycho 2 from. But this is actually a good film. I like it. It's really good, but it's fucking weird. It's ridiculous as hell. And it is Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2.
Okay.
So have you heard of it?
I don't know. I don't think I have even heard of Prom Night, especially Hello Mary.
Yeah.
Prom Night 2. I have seen Prom Night. Is this a sequel to the original Prom Night, I assume?
It is.
The
Jamie Lee Curtis. Yeah. It is. So, but it was conceived as a standalone kind of Canadian horror film. And it's from 1987, and we get Mr. Michael Ironside in there, which is random as well, because you look at it and it seems very low budget, much low budget than Scanners was, which was, I think, a few years before. And they made this film, and then they realized that coincidentally both of the schools in Hello Mary Lou, as it was originally called, and Prom Night were both called Hamilton High. So they were like, fuck it, Jamie Lee Curtis was in that film. It was relatively successful.
Yeah.
Let's just call it Prom Night 2.
There are a lot of cases of this out there where they've literally gone, we're closer, or we've made a horror film, and they're like, well, what horror film could it be like?
Yeah.
It's like, it was kind of like this. It's like, well, then why don't we market it?
Exactly. Well, I watched this before I watched Prom Night, and I actually think it's better. And I watched, there's no kind of crossover. There's no mention of the murders that took place in Prom Night in this school, apparently. There's nothing. And instead, we get this really weird mix of Carrie, The Exorcist, and Nightmare on Elm Street, because it opens up in 1957 at a prom. And we get this Mary Lou, the titular Mary Lou, or the titular Mary Lou, however you pronounce it, and she's confessing her sins to a local priest. She's saying she had loads of sex with boys and stuff like that, and then she goes, "Yeah, I loved every minute of it. Just fucking loves getting the pipe." And she goes to the prom.
That's exact dialogue.
That's literally the dialogue. I love the pipe. And then she then cheats on the person she's with at prom, who then tries to play a joke on her. She ends up getting burned alive. And then her spirit comes back just in time for 1987's prom season. And it's really strange because it has these kills that could be borrowed from Nightmare on Elm Street. Somebody gets hung with like a scarf or like some fabric, similar to how I think his name's Ron, how he dies in A Nightmare on Elm Street, how he gets hung. Somebody gets like pulled into this blackboard, which turns into this goo and it kills them. So we get this kind of weird stuff.
Which is nothing like just the serial killer, like the obsessive serial killer in the original.
No, nothing like the obsessive serial killer. Then we get bodily possession, kind of similar to The Exorcist, where Mary Lou now possesses someone.
It just sounds like they would basically just, right, there were these horror films that were made in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Let's just do them. Oh.
Yeah. And then we get slasher-style kills in that possession. And then when we get to the end, it's kind of like Carrie, where we have a Carrie-esque finale where it just goes insane at prom and we get resurrection. We get portals to the underworld, and we get a good old.
This does sound fully. Yep. It sounds the most ridiculous of all the ones we've had.
It does, and we get a good old-fashioned twist at the end. You even get a little bit of eroticism with Michael Ironside, which is always something I look for in films. And it's just this super weird, like low-budget film, which I just found, and I was like, "Fuck me." I'm watching this and I loved it and it was so cool. And it's really weird because later they made a sequel in 1990 called Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss. And Mary Lou returns in this, but it's now a horror comedy which parodies the other film. And it starts with Mary Lou in hell and she tries to break out. I've only watched about half of it, so I can't consider it for the list. But it's like a horror comedy. It's really weird. And then we get Prom Night 4, Deliver Us from Evil, which is just about a slasher and never mentions Mary Lou again, And it's just this, it kind of is a sequel, but it's like, it's in the way in which it's, like you said, it's just tacked on.
Yeah.
They just made this film and were like, how can we get some money from that? Let's do this.
If we link it to prom night, some people might come and see it.
Some people might see it, and I guess it revolves around prom night, so you can kind of argue that's the link there. Prom night at the same
but it's
school.
Not anything like.
But it's not anything like it,
except for a prom.
Except
basically,
for a prom.
it's just prom.
Yeah, but it's so cool. It's super weird, man. And it's one of those ones where I just highly recommend that people just go and watch.
I'd definitely give that a go. It sounds good.
Yeah, and I will watch Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss, to round off the
Mad trilogy.
The Mad trilogy.
Yeah, because even to be fair, like it's not like I'm putting it in a high regard because even the original Prom Night or even the remake of it, they're not great.
Oh, the remake of Prom Night is fucking mind-numbingly boring.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And the original Prom Night is okay,
It's a bit of a bland slasher.
Yeah.
To be honest, this sounds more interesting.
Exactly, that's it.
Sometimes ridiculous can be more interesting. Sometimes if you've got an idea, or sometimes if you can just be balls to the wall with it.
Just throw it out.
Jump that shark all you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially when sometimes the original was okay, or the original had an okay idea which could be twisted into something fucked up.
Yeah, and that's it. Sometimes, with horror franchises, especially, sometimes you need to have a bit of ridiculous in your life, and eventually you will jump the shark, but it's sometimes not always a bad thing, and I guess that has been, unless you've got anything to add.
No, that was a ridiculous time.
that was a ridiculous time. So as always, we hope you've enjoyed the show. Come and let us know what you thought of our films, if you've seen any of them, and let us know your favorite ridiculous horror sequels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at CMDH Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you get the episodes as soon as they release. We've got a bunch of cool episodes coming up over the spooky season. We will be having our campfire specials towards the end of the month. And if you could leave us a review, it helps the show grow. We really appreciate it. Thank you again, and we will see you next week.